Hey, and if I'm doing things right, you can now hear me and see my PowerPoint. So, step one. But my name's Anca de Vries. I've been on the committee for, I think, a year now, slightly over. I've been teaching for 13 years from vocational, secondary, and now university. And I've always had a thing with nature and the planet. I grew up in not necessarily poverty, but definitely we didn't have a lot of money. And then sustainability comes easy because if you can't buy new, you learn to mend what you have and you learn to save what you have. And it has always surprised me how little people do this. Now, I'm the opposite of Chris, in the sense that he thinks we need anger to change the world. I think we need to make the climate crisis fun. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to give you three reasons or three ways to do this in your classes. Well, your next class, basically, because that's how easy they are. But let me first say, let me see how I can go to the next one. First, why? Why is communication? So this has been studied a ton of times, and we know that if you give people the horror scenario, they just basically block and not do anything anymore. Now, these days, also studies are showing that giving them the plain facts and being very factual and informative is pretty much the same as the horror story, and again, will block people. So what they're saying now is if we're communicating about climate, we need to talk about what we can do. This does not take away from the fact that I completely agree with Chris that we can do only so little compared to the really rich and the really influential companies and people. But we need to talk about what we do with our classes also, because in my classes, at least my default setting is informative. Like these are the facts, this is what you should know. We also know that motivation enhances engagement. So the more motivating my classes, the more my students are likely to learn, to actually do something in class, and better yet, to go away from my classes and do something after. So that's why I'm saying we should motivate, make it fun. Easiest way to make it fun, sound fun. Now, anyone with a dog or a toddler will know that this works. Like you can say the most horrible things, and as long as you say it with the right intonation, they'll be happy. They'll wag their tails, they'll look forward to whatever it is you want to do with them. Why? Because basically the 55-38-7 formula. The numbers are a bit bogus. Albert Morabian has done multiple studies, and then he took the average of all those studies and said, this is how it works. But basically, whenever I have a message, you hear the message 100% content focused. But whenever you want to interpret the message, and we're talking about feelings or how we experience something, 55% is visual. That is body language, but that's also the secondhand jumper I'm wearing, the bookcases in the background that make me look smarter than I am. So it's sort of the overall picture. 38% is my intonation. I can make something sound fun. My voice also, we don't always control that one. And only 7% is textual. So make it sound fun, and it will actually enhance engagement. I tested this on my students a couple of months ago. At university, I often have like at least 7 or 8 parallel groups. This tends to be a bit boring, so I very unethically experiment on my students. And I had this one class, and they all had the same class. For half my students, half the classes had a game that I called an educational activity that we introduced. And then I talked about the learning objectives that we would establish at the end. The other class had a jingle, because all good things have a jingle, like ice cream, the news, not so much good, but also, again, catches our attention. I called it a game, and I said that they had to count up the points they had at the end so we could see who'd won and learned the most. And then at the end, I asked everybody, could you fill in a questionnaire? It's nothing to do with the classes, just for me, please, would help me if you fill in the questionnaire. 20% more students filled in the questionnaire from the fun classes. And when I asked them, how did you score the class overall, and how did you score how much you've learned? More than 1 point difference. So just by making it sound fun, we can already enhance engagement, which I think we can use if you can use it on my boring classes, we can definitely use it on serious, difficult topics such as climate crisis. Second is make it look fun, because we are very vain and simple people, but we do judge books by their cover. We always say we don't think in boxes, we don't judge books by their cover, but we do. And that makes sense, because if I'm going on a train trip this afternoon, I'm not going to bring my thickest Shakespeare volume. I'm going to bring a thin one that's also fun to read. Retail also knows this. Retail is great with this because they make money on this. There are studies being done on the type of flooring in a shop. There are studies being done on the type of hangers they put your clothes on. Because Primark, Pennies, shops like that look cheap, we only pay little for what it is. But something at a shop where it's 4 or 5 times as expensive, made from the same fabric, same factory, we pay more. Why? Because there's flooring in the shop that looks fancy, because there's hangers. We sort of, how it looks influences how we treat something. So design websites, or even old school DIY. I did something with poetry a while back, and you can do a poem like this, like, even with some illustrations, like I made an effort. And my students know that. But when I actually have time, I also have a poem in Flanders Fields that I got the simile version of, so the actual handwriting of the poet, and I put it in coffee for a bit, so it actually looks old. And my students were even asking me, "Is this from World War One?" And I'd say, "Come on, you're adults. No, it's not." But the way they treated it, the way they appreciated it, really shows again that I value poetry, and in this case, John McCrae, and they would also. We sometimes forget this also, as I said, in our classes. I have so much I need to do. We'll just put it in, squeeze it in, and we'll make time. But sometimes it's important to say, I'll make time for you. Let's sit down. Let's do this right. I once taught the exact same classes 2 years in a row. The first year, my students said, it was fun, but grammar, like we really should have had more grammar. It didn't feel like classes. So the next year I taught the exact same classes, except all the grammar slides had a different color and again, a jingle. And guess what? The year after that, they said, well, it was a lot of grammar, but it was good. Because again, if we emphasize something, they do also. And then lastly, actually turn it into something fun. I'm big on game didactics, gamification, and obviously if we're talking about making it fun, first two are easy because we also have jobs, lives, and other things to do. But if we actually have time, I'd invite everybody to think about how can we turn any activity that relates to sustainability into something that's a bit more gamified. Add a leaderboard, add incentives why they should do something, reward what's important. But this is the tricky thing about the incentives, because if we're rewarding students for something, if I hand out a prize for the fastest written English letter, or the best written English letter, or the one with the fewest mistakes, I'm sort of focusing on different things. And on the slide, you can see the phrase from an YouTube talk that I really appreciate. It says it's about AI. Actually, the word AI isn't even mentioned in the first half because it's about game theory. So she says basically everything you can turn into a game, but as soon as the game is tainted, it is. Journalism used to be a win-win game. Journalists got prizes for being the best, and the best investigative journalist would make sure that we knew the truth. As a society, we'd win, journalists would win. Now, journalists are dependent on having a job with a bigger organization, and they sell the most by telling people what they want to hear. That means investigative journalism is more text writing, which means they're losing, but also as a society, we are losing. And I think this is good to keep in mind for our classes also. Whenever we do make something fun, make sure we don't make fun of, and also definitely make sure that we incentivize the right things. So unlike Chris, I do believe in eco-warriors, and we should turn our students into eco-warriors. Not warriors, but warriors, the other one. But let's do it the fun way. Let's do it the motivational way.